Hi, everyone. My name is Carolyn, as Sarah said. I'm based in Toronto, and we're actually having some work done on our chimney. So sorry if you see some people going back and forth. Um, I work with Resolve, so I'm going to tell you a bit about Resolve and our general approach and strategy around responsible sourcing, and then pass it off to my dear colleague, Stephen, who, as he said, is based in Sierra Leone. We'll talk about the practical sort of on-the-ground work and lessons learned that they're working through. So Resolve is almost 50 years old. We started as a facilitating and mediating organization based in the environmental space, but over the past 15, 20 years have really moved to keep that multi-stakeholder and mediation piece at the core of what we do. But we have three programs where we try to lead creative solutions to some of the world's biggest problems. Stephen and I work in the natural resources program. We also have a healthy communities program and a conservation solutions program. So our work in responsible sourcing goes back about 15, 20 years, and there are a number of people at Resolve and in our network who have been really incredible leaders in that space. And what we like to say that we work across the supply chain, and our work sometimes focuses on helping design and structure downstream incentives and initiatives. So that's things like policy, legislation around conflict minerals, due diligence, just informing and building the knowledge set of end users and refiners and different folks along on that end of the supply chain. But we also work upstream. We also work with producers, communities, and governments at a local level to support managing impacts and sharing benefits associated with mining. And we do that with both large scale mining, but also small scale and artisanal mining. So our role in that is often to help all of those different stakeholders articulate some of the problems and opportunities, to learn and understand different perspectives about those opportunities and problems, but then also test out solutions for some of those things. So I'm just going to list off 5 of the things that we're currently asking ourselves or thinking about that we don't really have total clarity on yet, but things that are top of mind for us, and then I'll pass it to Stephen. So one of the things that we're really focused on right now is streamlining and consolidating due diligence and standards. So just acknowledging the huge amount of work that goes into making sure that actors along the supply chain are meeting expectations around responsible sourcing. But we need to make those processes more efficient, more cost effective, but also we need to make sure that they're serving a broader group of stakeholders, including like local stakeholders and community groups. We're also really focused on concepts of progressivity. So that means focusing on progressive improvement as opposed to expecting everyone to have top marks and 100% on day one. We know that we won't be able to really engage with the breadth of the supply chain if we're only really focused on people who are doing 100 or getting 100%. But that requires a shift in thinking, and it doesn't mean we don't have to have, base standards and expectations and hard lines, but it does mean that we have to think differently about how we're expecting people to move through and learn themselves as we're trying to change some of these systems. The third thing that we're really focused on is traceability. We're involved in a number of different initiatives that focus on that and really improving our capacity to see how, if we can see, we can trace a mineral from the source all the way to how it's produced into another product and then used and then even disposed of, or, better yet, recycled and reused. There's, I think everyone here would agree that supply chains tend to be very, very opaque, and there's lots of reasons for that. And so trying to work the traceability through that, it has a lot of challenges. The fourth thing that we're really looking at is encouraging folks to take a holistic landscape approach. Historically, we focused on certain commodities, certain sites, certain actors, and what we're finding is that a holistic approach that looks across a region where minerals or other materials are coming from allows us to understand all the drivers for how responsible natural resource development and mineral development can be understood and really harnessed, but it also allows us to understand the cumulative impacts associated with not just mineral development and use, but all of the other activities that can happen in places where mining is happening. So we're exploring some of those, how to do that, because it's maybe a nice idea in theory, but a lot of that is actually about monitoring improvement and change across a region and across many different areas of interest, like biodiversity, environmental impacts, climate impacts, community well-being impacts, etc. And then the last thing that we're always focused on and learning about, but definitely not the least thing, is creating space for people to meet, to understand each other, to be in dialogue, and to innovate, to try to improve some of these issues. So really excited to be here today, and thrilled that this platform is now in its 5th year, because things like this go a long way in helping people see their work in the greater ecosystem, and making some of those connections to different stakeholders. So Stephen, with that, I will pass it off to you.
Oh, Stephen, I think you might be on mute. We can try and lip read.
Sorry.
Can't guarantee we'll get it right.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for that. And just to let you know, I'm not as professional as Caroline, so I have to depend on a couple of slides to get my message across. So can you please allow me to share? Okay, can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Yes, so this moment, I want to share an experience with you from Sierra Leone, and it is about the artisanal and small-scale diamond industry. So this project is based in Sannoh, and probably you would have heard of Sierra Leone and the diamond stories and all that. So we are a resource-rich nation, and diamonds are a part of the mix we have. And we'll have some kind of turbulent history with resource management and the resource cost cycle. But like opportunities like this are a clear indication of how we are as a resilient nation. We are ready to correct the wrongs and let resource diamonds, in this case, actually serve the purposes they are meant for. So in Sannoh, we are providing support to a program that is called GemFair. And our fundamental role in that program is to build capacity of artisanal miners so that their operations can be socially and environmentally informed. So generally, this couple of slides, we aim at communicating the issues we are dealing with at the moment. My slides cannot move. Uh-oh. I'm having difficulty moving my slide to the next one.
Would you like to stop sharing and then move it and then reset share? Do you want to try that, Stephen?
Okay.
Or while you're doing it, Carolyn and I, we can dance it out, can't we? What do you think?
Stephen, why don't I try to share the slides, Stephen, and you keep talking?
Okay, that's against another one, but let me just try one more time and see what comes up. Okay, see this one. Okay, can you see this?
Yes, we can. It looks beautiful.
Okay, so again, it is a GemFair ASM assurance program, and what is it about in general? So it is about responsible sourcing of diamonds from 331 artisanal mining sites. That is 4,965 miners in Sierra Leone. So generally, all mining sites have workers. On average, you have like 25 to 30 people working on one site. So put together in this program, there are 4,965 miners in the scheme. So a couple of core values in this program. The program is about traceability of the diamonds, empowerment to miners, fair value for the miners, and inclusion, so that every miner in the country in time to come will be part of the responsible sources scheme in Conon. So again, we are providing, as I said initially, we are providing training for these 4,965 miners on social matters, health and safety matters, and environmental best practices. So it is on records that we have been able to train 86 miners. These are like the owners of the site. That can be the owner of the license, the manager of the license, and a gang leader. So we have been able to train 86 of them over 11 sessions. Yes, so another very interesting thing about the ASM assurance program is about the financial support. So as you are very much aware of the way artisanal mining is, it is a very, I will use this word lightly, but it's informal sector, though that it's contested in several ways. But again, artisanal miners are mostly in a surviving mode. So access to finance to do their work is always a big problem. So this program is also trying to fix that particular matter by providing upfront cash for miners to do their operations. So in this whole mix, what are the things that are getting better when you consider artisanal mining? So wages are improving for participating miners, which is also a very fundamental core value in this whole thing about fair value being paid to miners for their labor and for their work. So we have also seen observed that safety consideration are very up the mark now. Miners are increasingly using personal protective equipment, and they are willing or aware to speak about health and safety matters as it relates to their vocation. So there is also increased knowledge on environmental best practices. Miners are using trenching methods to mine. They are using methods that prevent oil spillage in the environment, and they are also very much into processes that will conserve environment very much. So again, 185 of the active 311 mining sites are fully completed their corrective actions. The corrective actions are actually those gray areas we see with mining operations, and we work with them that it can be resolved. So we have 185 mines inside that are very okay with those things, and there are 126 that are still in progress, working towards getting all the issues resolved. Yeah, so all this whole thing again is based on a blockchain platform. So Tracer is the platform that is being used for the diamond resources or the diamond from the program to be fully traceable from mine sites to markets. So here is a photo of examples of what is happening. The first photo speaks to the safe mining practices. There is deliberate attempts for mining to happen in ways that the life of the miners cannot be endangered. So they are encouraged to do trenches on one hand to ensure that they work safely. And in the next picture, you can also see a trenching method where miners can quite organize their mining operation so that they can't go about just spitting all over the place. It is a very creative way of ensuring that they reduce their impact on the environment. So it can be as good as it can be, but there are still fundamental considerations as this whole program evolves. So one major one is the fundamental thinking of miners is to put food on the table. So when you talk about responsible sourcing, a lot of people will be thinking, oh, how can I put food on my table can be the key thing. So there are challenges with those kind of thinking. So again, the scope of most responsible sourcing schemes really quite much involves environmental and social consideration. And again, it comes to the fact that miners want to eat. So talking about the environment talking about sociality, community dialogue, and all that, that can be very fancy. So the crux of their thinking is food on the table. So it becomes a bit turbid when you want to advance ethical practices with miners. So it is again an important thing that miners deserve dignity and agency, which is not necessarily the crux of responsible sourcing. So you have to talk about the environment, you have to talk about community rights, workers' rights, and all those kind of things. But the crux of the matter is always survival and survival for the artisanal mining. So addressing environmental social provisions is a livelihood venture. So responsible sourcing schemes must get it right, otherwise all the pillars will not work. Of course, you have environment, you have social things in the mining themselves, but the fundamental things in miner, if you can't focus on getting it right with the miner, then all the other pillars in the responsible sourcing scheme can hardly work. One fundamental thing that is still an issue with this whole scheme is that most drivers of responsible sourcing schemes are actually like external to like producing countries like Sierra Leone. So the mining legislations in the country can be as progressive as it can be as we have in Sierra Leone, but there are still fundamental gaps between what actually obtains in the laws and what is required of an ethical mining site. So people are still evolving. This is still evolving, and we are still trying to ensure that the practices of ethical responsible sourcing is fully compatible with our laws. Thank you so very much. This is all I have to share.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much for that, Stephen. And thank you very much as well, Carolyn. I'll come and join you just here on the stage. So a question actually for both of you and about artisanal and small scale mining. We've had quite a lot of talks this week where that kind of underlying theme of, okay, should I buy, be it my diamonds, and I say that grandly, I don't have any diamonds, but let's say I wanted to buy some. Would it be better for me to try and source them from an artisanal miner or a large scale miner? And I realize this might vary depending on what the commodity is. But Stephen, given the work that you've just outlined there, is this a clear-cut decision or is it something me as the buyer, actually I need to do my homework and try to understand the provenance of where that diamond has maybe come from? What do you think? And then I'll bring in Carolyn.
Yes, so generally the large-scale mining are quite organized. They have their systems from production to sales. So it is a bit tricky for you to just walk in the company and say, I want to buy. That can be tricky. But like for artisanal miners, they are actually loose, as informal as can be. So you, the buyer, can approach any artisanal miner and do business with that person. Though that is, again, is strictly illegal, because by law, you have to buy diamonds from an exporting house, and the artisanal miner is expected to sell to a local exporting house. And you, probably another trader or downstream, can only buy diamond and export through an exporting house. So that is the ideal situation. But as it is now, you can actually go into the streets of Sannoh, go to some mining sites, buy diamonds, get that in your pocket, come to the airport and fly out that. So it is as that, very flexible.
Thank you, Stephen. Carolyn, do you have any thoughts just to add to that? Oh, we can't.
Sorry, just trying to unmute myself. Yeah, I'll totally add to that. I think, thank you, Stephen, for reminding us that that is the reality, right? That people do have access to buy diamonds despite the legal and different regulatory systems we've put in place. And I think just to your point, or to your question, that it is up to buyers of diamonds or any mineral to be aware of and to do what they can to understand the provenance of that commodity. I think diamonds in particular, because you know, the value that they have is about our cultural and emotional value that we place on it most often, and so I think that often it feels like consumers of diamonds or buyers of diamonds should be even more focused on understanding the provenance of those commodities. I do think, though, it's important for us to be realistic, and as Stephen was saying, about the realities of people's interest in that, and also capacity to do it. You know, I think yeah, that just depending on where you are in the world, where you're buying the end product, you have different capacity and abilities to ask questions and to find answers. But also around the world, not, you know, it's just not as important for everybody. So it's an important driver. It's not the only driver.
Awesome. Well, thank you very, very much. There's a couple of questions for you in the chat. Maybe if you guys could do that in the written form, that would be fantastic. But everyone, thank you very much. Please put your hands together for the wonderful Carolyn and Stephen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.